postbellum period of the United States is considered to extend from the end of the Civil War in 1865 to approximately 1900. While there were economic fluctuations, it was alternatively known as the Gilded Age, as the economic growth, development, and expansion of the United States was truly miraculous at the time. It was a period of entrepreneurial driven development. In determining a person to focus upon in this discussion, several focus points could be considered as determining factors in that decision. Economic factors such as who gained the most wealth, who developed the largest industries, or who controlled the most people as employees, all could be examples. Before selecting an individual to explore and highlight, I decided to go back to the very basics of entrepreneurial definitions, asking the question, what defines and motivates an entrepreneur, and what traits might they have in common? In short, a short, simple Google search on that topic, no matter how the exact search is phrased, presents the user with easily 15 million results, ranging from the 3 most important traits of an entrepreneur to the 36 most important traits, and almost every number in between. And those values were from the first 100 or so of the suggested websites. I decided in favor of academic rigor and selected a web-based presentation by University of Southern California's Applied Psychology Department, which among other observations presented a list of characteristics they say represent those of the, quote, typical, if there is such a thing, entrepreneur. After reviewing the USC presentation and several others, which all seem to be in tight agreement on the core values and looser agreement on others, I selected what I think is the typical person that could represent the entrepreneurial spirit and actions that swept the country during this period. His activities spanned several industries, businesses, and personal issues, and whose timeline crossed into the 20th century before his eventual and still untimely death. In spite of initial failures, he still managed to participate in the overall growth of the United States, and in the process amassed a personal fortune estimated to be worth $60 million at the time of his death in 1913. A conservative estimate in today's dollars would be approximately 1.6 billion, which, while not the wealthiest industrial in the nation at the time, as he invested tens of millions of dollars into the development of the state of Florida, there are public schools, cities, counties, neighborhoods, communities, colleges, and more that carry the name and legacy of Henry Flagler, an entrepreneur that helped the very term entrepreneur. As noted in the reference by author, originally journalist Ida Arabell, in her book, The History of the Standard Oil Company, which is an entrepreneurial story on its own, Flagler was a partner with John D. Rockefeller and was the operational brains of the organization, which at its peak controlled 92% of American oil production and distribution. This venture was actually Flagler's third, the first two, a salt mining and shipping company during the Civil War, and as a grain merchant and dealer after the salt company collapsed, that business also ending in failure. Standard Oil was formed in 1872 and was Flagler's third attempt at developing a business. And that's typical of the degree of commitment of many entrepreneurs. The economics of Flagler at this point become very complex, as one might imagine. And in the mid-1880s, as a result of deteriorating health of his then wife, he decided to visit St. Augustine, Florida, then a very small patch of marginally developed swamp. That was all Flagler needed, as he decided to build the then world's largest resort hotel, known as the Ponce de Leon, which was an instant success. Following that, he moved further south, connecting the state while he focused on real estate development, and he also purchased and consolidated a diverse rail system that became the Florida East Coast Railway, which is still operating today. Along the way, he created major properties and developments along his railroad, and he developed Palm Beach as a resort with an even larger hotel and resort, Miami as a commercial city and resort, and ultimately in the early 20th century built his overseas railroad connecting Key West to the rest of the state. During this time, the population of the United States more than doubled from approximately 31 million in 1860 to 77 million in 1900. Looking at these accomplishments, as noted in his biography at the Flagler Museum in Palm Beach, quote, during the next quarter century, he literally invented modern Florida. The transportation infrastructure, as well as the tourism and agricultural industries he established, still remain, even today. And they are the very foundation of Florida's economy, while building the Overseas Railroad remains the most ambitious engineering feat ever undertaken by a private citizen. The accomplishments and impact on American life could not have been more significant by any private person, affecting more segments of industry and countless numbers of people. Henry Morrison Flagler was the very definition of an entrepreneur, and the time period in which he lived made that even more significant. Thank you very much for watching and for your attention.